In question 10, I wanted to see if you could recognize apparent functions of some closely related functions. So the first one I'm going to look at is graph A. In graph A, there are two graphs that are fairly similar to each other. The only difference between graph A and graph B is that graph A is a little steeper between a little flatter in between -1 and 1, and it's steeper once we get outside of 1 and -1. So the ones that got a little bit steeper were higher power, so I know that this one, of the two that are good candidates, x to the fourth of x squared, A, since it's steeper on the outside, flatter on the inside, is my fourth degree polynomial. So this is graph A, and graph B is the one that's a little bit flatter, or our basic quadratic graph. The next graph, at graph C and D, since they're butterfly and volcano, the idea that I would have carried away from this is that if I have a volcano graph like C is indicating that we have, then that's got to be an x squared, or 1 over x squared. So some of these candidates are pretty good. This one, if I want to change it, is 1 over x, and the other one is 1 over x squared. So I found my good candidate there. So that means that graph C is the x to the -2. The other one is our butterfly graph, and the butterfly graphs are raised to the -1 or just 1 over x. So that means graph D is your butterfly graph, or y equals x to -1. Our final graph are two Nike styles graphs that we have. The only difference is that this blue one is a little steeper in between -1 and 1. So let me get a better color. So between -1 and 1, it's a little bit steeper, and outside of 1, it gets a little bit flatter. So when that happened, we had to have a larger power onto that Nike swoosh symbol. So since these are our Nike swoosh, they had to be even power. So I'm looking at this one as a good candidate, and this one's a good candidate. But the steeper they got in between 0 and 1, the bigger the power, and the flatter they got outside of 1, the bigger the power. So that means graph F is your fourth root, and this could be written as the fourth root of x if you don't like the rational exponent, and this one could be written as x to the 1/2 as the square root of x. That is graph E. This is the one that was not used. That third degree polynomial, remember, was a sideways s, and there's no sideways s in this graphing that I displayed.